Okay, so you might be wondering, why in the world is your left hand on my computer screen right now? Well, it's for a very good reason, ladies and gentlemen, and it's because my left hand is effectively quadrant 1 of our unit circle. There we go. So in quadrant 1 we have, and I'm going to do this all in radians, this is pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. And of course my thumb would be pi over 2. And my pinky would be 0 radians. Now, okay, cool. My hand is quadrant 1. How does that help me? Well, we're going to use our left hand to remember what the sine and cosine and tangent values are for each one of these angles. Get ready, it's exciting. Here we go. So let's say that we want to know what the sine, cosine, and tangent are for pi over 6. What I do is I put that finger down on my left hand. And what we have to envision is, let's say Mr. Schnack is real cool, and he gets divided by 2 tattooed onto his palm. I mean, who doesn't want that? The rule that we're going to use is square root the fingers and divide by 2. Okay, well, what in the world does that mean? Well, remember that sine is, if we envision our unit circle, sine is the y-coordinate, cosine is the x-coordinate. We're going to count our fingers and square root them. So for the sine of pi over 6, we're going to count up from the bottom of our hand. So we're going to count the number of fingers below pi over 6, and that's 1. What's the square root of 1? Well, the square root of 1 is 1, and we're going to divide by 2. And then let's say we want to know what the cosine of pi over 6 is. Well, there we're going to count horizontally. We're going to count from the thumb. 1, 2, 3. And remember, we square root our fingers and divide them by 2. This will be the square root of 3 divided by 2. Now let's say we want tangent. Oh boy, that's got to be real difficult, doesn't it? Well, not really, because tangent is sine divided by cosine. Square root of 1 divided by square root of 3. So tangent pi over 6 is 1 over the square root of 3. Done. And there we go. Let's move on to the other fingers on our hand and see if we can't do the same sort of arguments. So which angle would this be for? Compare it back to our unit circle. This angle is going to be for pi over 4. And we want to know again, what is the sine of pi over 4, the cosine of pi over 4, and the tangent of pi over 4. And remember, Mr. Schnack is cool, and he has divided by 2 tattooed on his palm. I mean, who doesn't? So let's evaluate this. Let's count. Remember, sine, we count from the bottom. We count the fingers below the angle that we want. Well, what do we do with the fingers? We square root them. Square root of 2 divided by 2. And the cosine of pi over 4, remember, for cosine, we count from the thumb. We count above our angle finger. Square root the fingers, divide by 2. Cosine of pi over 4 is square root of 2 over 2. And now how do we do tangent? Well, we do tangent by taking sine divided by cosine. Square root of 2 divided by square root of 2. Well, the tangent of this is 1. And compare these answers to our unit circle, and you will find that these are the same values for sine and cosine that we found using right triangles. Let's check out the next finger. Okay, so what finger would this represent? Well, that represents our 60-degree angle, better known in radians as pi over 3. Let's find the sine of pi over 3. Well, remember, guys, we count up from the bottom. We count from our pinky for sine. What's the sine? Square root of 3. And what does Mr. Schnack have tattooed on his hand? Divided by 2, of course. Who doesn't? And so the sine of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2. Cosine pi over 3 is equal to, where do we count, ladies and gentlemen? We count from the thumb. We count above this. So square root of 1 is 1 divided by 2. The cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2. And finally, how do we evaluate tangent? We take sine divided by cosine. Sine is the square root of 3. Cosine is the square root of 1. And of course, they're both over 2. But square root of 3 over 1, tangent of pi over 3 is the square root of 3 over 1, or just the square root of 3. Well, does this idea work for 0 radians and pi over 2 radians? Absolutely it does. Check out the next picture. So let's say we want pi over 2. Which finger do we put down? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we put down our thumb. That's our pi over 2 finger. And what is the sine? Well, the sine we're going to count from the bottom. What's the square root of 4? Square root of 4 is 2 divided by 2. The sine of pi over 2 is 2 over 2, better known as 1. And what is the cosine of pi over 2? Well, we count above the finger we put down. Well, what's over here? Well, there's nothing. Cosine of pi over 2 is 0 divided by 2, better known as 0. And we can use the same arguments for tangent as we did before. And the same thing would work if I made my pinky disappear and we found what the sine and cosine of 0 radians are. Well, that's great, Mr. Schnack, but how does that help me in the other quadrants? Well, if you can identify the quadrant that you're in, you know whether or not sine, cosine, tangent are positive or negative. And if you can identify the reference angle, you know which one of these fingers to put down for the first quadrant, and you can identify the sine, cosine, or tangent, and then attach the appropriate sign. So, if you can hold on to your left hand and manage not losing it, you should be able to evaluate any of these sine, cosine, and tangent values for our nice angles of 30, 60, 45, and any 90-degree